So let's talk about this very interesting topic called Service Encounter 2.0, right? Now, since there is no specific chapter available in any of the services marketing textbook that I have come across so far, I looked into some of the recent literature and my own research in this area to create a storyline, okay? So in this topic, we will try to revisit three things, or we'll try to look into three things. One is, we'll revisit service dominant logic of marketing. And do you remember, we did have a discussion on service dominant logic when we were talking about, when did we talk about service dominant logic? We spoke about service dominant logic when we were talking about co-creation of value or co-creation of services, when you did your shoes of prey assessment or case study, right? We'll have a brief talk about customer engagement and its importance in marketing and services marketing in particular. And finally, we'll have a brief overview of what is this whole game of Service Encounter 2.0, right? Now, what is service dominant logic of marketing? Anybody? We spent we had a very rich discussion when we spoke about co-creation of value. And that was the time when we discussed about service dominant logic. What is service dominant logic of marketing? So if there is a service dominant logic, there is a product dominant logic, or there is a goods dominant logic, right? You just go to wikipedia.com and you will find everything about service dominant logic. You don't have to read a book. Wikipedia has a very, very good section on service dominant logic. Anybody, what is service dominant logic?
This is a framework for explaining value creation through exchange, non-configuration, actors. Whatever that.
Are you reading Wikipedia?
Yes.
Wonderful. That's a nice place to learn two things, marketing and statistics. You learn a lot of statistics through Wikipedia. It is a framework which provides us an overarching theory of value co-creation or value creation. That is the fundamental basis of service dominant logic. Service dominant logic says that service is everything. And we started with this in week 1. That every business is a service business. That was the framework which we started with. And value is always created as a result of the mutual interaction between customer and the firm. Do you recollect? You remember shoes of prey. What is the fundamental business model of shoes of prey? You did this assessment. What is the fundamental business model of shoes of prey? How is it different from others? It is an online retailer, but there are 101 online retail companies.
It's all about customization.
It's all about customization. It's about involving the customer in creation of shoes. Shoes means go to a store, find your size, find your shape, find your color, buy it. But this is a company which alters the traditional model of shoe retailing and involves the customer in designing the shoe, right? So it's bringing the customer and the company closer. And that is the fundamental aspect of service dominant logic, where you move ahead of the production mechanism of marketing to a customization and a customer-centric focus of marketing. So what is goods dominant logic? Now, goods dominant logic says that the purpose of economic activity is to create and distribute goods, that's all. And that has been the fundamental assumption or fundamental basis of marketing for a long period of time. That product is the main thing. You produce, you sell, that's all is our marketing. Does that make sense? Right? So think about a time when computers were manufactured. Who was one of the best computer company in the 80s, 1980s, mid-80s, late 80s? HP and IBM. These were the two dominant players, and Compaq. Then came one company, Dell. Apple was a later story. Even before Apple came, there were oranges playing in the market. And Michael Dell, what did Michael Dell do? That took all other computer manufacturers by surprise. What did Michael Dell do? Everybody is saying, I'm manufacturing a computer, I'm putting it at a retailer, come and buy my computer. This guy says, you tell me what type of a computer you want, I will manufacture it, and I will send it directly to you. You remember this story of Michael Dell? No? You don't know about Dell's story. That is Dell's direct model. Dell's direct supply chain model. So you create and you deliver to the customer. You do not need intermediaries. Right? This was a very revolutionary idea at that point in time. And they invited people, come on my website, tell me what kind of a customized computer you want, what type of a RAM, what screen, what type of everything you want. And I will assemble and send it to you. And Dell computers are not the best computers, but they were best value for money. Why? Say it again. They only have. They are customer-centric one, and they are cutting down on cost. The moment you remove the intermediaries, you don't have to pay them any fees, any commission, right? So they don't charge you any money to host your products. So you save that and you pass that benefit to the end user. This is called Dell's direct model. And this was one of the early moves from IBM's, HP's, and Compaq's of that time, who were product-centric, goods dominant, right? And they were making a move towards something called service dominant. Pick up the phone, call me, tell me what type of a computer you want, and I deliver to your doorstep, right? So earlier, most of the computer companies were doing this. I make, I sell, right? And I make money. But this guy took a step forward and he said, I make, I sell, I service, right? And I save money for you as an organization. So I'm making a move from a goods-centric to a customer-centric kind of a firm. At that point in time, in goods-dominant logic, services were considered as an add-on. Now, I still remember my first job was a sales and service engineer. So I used to sell scientific instruments to physics, engineering labs. And one of the areas where we used to make a lot of money was add-on services. When I look back, I still think that we were very much a goods-dominant business. So we used to import products from America, Europe, and we will sell it in India. So why we were still a goods dominant was, we will sell the product and services was just one component of the whole offering. Does that make sense to you? So if I sell a spectrometer, one of the hot selling products were software-enabled spectrometers, which were used by chemistry labs, physics labs, and engineering labs. So we will sell the product, and then we will charge for the additional after-sale services. But again, the focus was primarily on the product that we were selling, not on the wholesome service delivery mechanism. And we were ignoring all of these IHIP categories. Do you remember IHIP? At least you should go out of this unit with IHIP, if not anything else. Right? IHIP, SD logic, and service encounter. These few things, of course, service blueprinting, because you are doing your project. Because service blueprinting is a very practical approach. You can utilize this in any of the businesses that you work for, given an opportunity, right? So through a goods dominant logic, you still see offerings with services being on the fringe, not the main thing. Because you are ignoring the intangibility, the heterogeneity, and all other aspects of services that are important to consider. However, there are problems with goods dominant logic. What are those problems? What is the fundamental problem with the goods dominant logic of marketing? Anybody? What is the fundamental problem with the goods dominant logic or a product concept? It's narrow. And it's not focused on the customers. It's focused on the thing, the physical object. Product is nothing but a physical object, right, which is perishable. But if you focus on customers, if you keep customer at the center and then design your strategies, then you are broadening your lens through which to look at. And goods lack most of this. The goods have tangibility, you can standardize, but the problem with any service or the typical characteristics of a service is it is intangible, very hard to standardize, right? It's heterogeneous, and it is perishable. So if you focus only on the product, then you miss out the augmentation that is possible to market a service. Then there was an emergence of this service dominant logic, where they say that everything is a service. There is nothing called product. Now this debate can go on forever, but for the sake of argument, we consider that everything or every business is a service business. Do you agree? Do you agree? Now we can have like 10-hour discussion or 10-hour debate on this, whether there is a difference between product and services. But we did establish in week 2, week 3, that every product has a service element and every service has a product element. Do you get this point? Every product has a service component. Every service has a product component. Now think about your business school cafe who are selling coffee and other products. Is it a business of service or it is a business of product? Which business they are in? Which business Starbucks is in? Service. Do they have a product element? They have a product element. Now think of a computer manufacturer. They are selling products, primarily tangible products. Do they have a service element in it? They do have a service element in it, right? But what varies is the extent of the service component, right? So every service or every business is a service. So what service dominant logic says is service is the common denominator of business. Service is the common denominator of business. And service is the fundamental exchange that happens, right? So it's not an exchange of only utilities. It's the exchange of services. It's the application of competences. And service is a process which is distinct from goods. Please remember this sentence, that service is the common denominator of business. Means service is the main thing. It's not only the physicality which is exchange between the producer and the customer. And value is always co-created. Value is always co-created. You always need the customer's involvement in creation of value. What is value? From the perspective of a seller. What is value from the perspective of a seller? Or a company? Profit, more customers, right? What is value from the perspective of customers? Say it again. Quality, satisfaction, perceived value, what I give and what I get. That ratio is something which customer values, right? Can you bring this customer and the company closer? This is what we discussed in co-creation of value. When Michael Dell says that come and customize your computer on my website, when Shoes of Praise says come and customize your shoes on my website, what I'm doing is I'm bridging the distance between the customer and the company. Does that make sense to you? I'm bridging the distance between the customer and the company. And what is the reason that I am bridging this distance? Build-A-Bear. You remember the example of Build-A-Bear? Create your taste. You don't remember Build-A-Bear, where you go and build your teddy bear. You don't get a teddy bear which is ready-made. You go and build your teddy bear along with the people at the workshop. Create your taste. Make your own burger. Make your own pizza. There are n number of examples, right? Where the customer and the company comes closer to create the end product. And that is service dominant logic. And how can I bring the customer and the company close? The more they are close, the chances that both the parties will benefit is higher. Right? So please remember this. So what is happening to marketing and of today is there is a shift from 1950s to 2010 to 2012. This is where we stand today, where we collaborate between customers and the companies to create value. Most of the companies are doing this. If you think of Starbucks, is there a way that Starbucks is trying to come closer to its customers? You have done Starbucks case. The very first case that you did was Starbucks. What is it trying to do to come closer to its customers? What Starbucks is trying to do is they have created a website called ideastarbucks.com, where you, as an individual customer of Starbucks, can go to their website and submit your ideas about new product lines, about different varieties of coffee, tea, and whatever, how to improve interior decor and everything. So you are free to submit your ideas. Now this is where I am inviting your feedback, your responses, and trying to incorporate that to create new products. Right? Does it make sense? So this is a specific website where Starbucks has created a platform to interact with the end user. What is the purpose of creating this website? Without looking or getting and doing anything, what is the purpose of creating this platform? This website is nothing but a platform to create interaction between the customer and the company, Starbucks and its customers. What is the purpose of this platform? To create interaction. Why do I need to create interaction between the customer and the company? Why do we need interaction between the customer and the company? It has always been one way. Company says, customers listens. 50, 100, 200 years, right? It's reversing now. So it's moving from a monologue to a dialogue. So this is a platform where I'm creating a dialogue. So it's not from the customer, it's not from the company to the customer only. It's the other way around, the customer to the company. Two-way communication. Two-way communication interaction is the basis of memorable customer experience, positive customer experience. Until and unless you are involved, you are not going to have a positive customer experience. And that is the reason for which I've created this platform as starbucks.com or ideas.starbucks.com, right? This is another aspect of value co-creation, another aspect of service dominant logic where I'm moving away from my main business. My main business is selling coffee and related food products. But I'm investing that kind of money so that I get your feedback to improve my products and services. Does that make sense? And this is the fundamental basis of service dominant logic, where I go a step forward to collaborate with my customers. Right? Any questions so far? Please go and read Co-Creation of Value once more after today. I don't exactly remember which week, but we did discuss this. One full week we had a discussion when you did your Shoes of Prey. And then you will see the linkage between service dominant logic and co-creation of value. Any questions so far? So there is a clear shift in movement in the marketing practice as well as research to bring these two parties together, closer. Any questions so far? So that was the first part of today's discussion that we thought we'll have. The second part of today's discussion is going to focus on another interesting area, which is customer engagement. Now, we did have a discussion a week ago, about 2 weeks ago, about customer loyalty, right? What is customer loyalty? Repeat purchase. That is one aspect of customer loyalty. advocate your brand. That is the second aspect. And there is a third aspect. Say it again. It's the positive attitude towards the brand. So loyalty will have three aspects. One is repeat purchase, which is the behavior part of it. Second is attitude. And the third is referral, word of mouth, advocacy. Now what is the need to look into all of these three aspects of loyalty? Before we come to engagement, we'll talk about that. So behavior is whether I buy or not. And how much do I buy from, say, if I compare my purchases at Coles and Woolies, if my repeat purchases are more at Woolies, then I will be probably a loyal customer of Woolies compared to Coles. But positive attitude is, do I travel 10, 20, 30 kilometers to buy a product, especially from Woolies, and I will ignore Coles, which comes, say, 10 kilometers away from my house, right? So if and only if I have a positive attitude towards Woolies, I will make that effort to travel 20K and go and buy from Woolies and ignore Coles. That is positive attitude. And referral, if and only if you have a positive attitude towards a product, towards a service, towards a retailer, you will take that extra step and spread positive word of mouth about the company, right? So as I always say, if you buy fish, meat, it's Woolies or fresh food. This is their positioning. And this attitude has a strong relationship with the positioning of the product or positioning of the service. So loyalty, satisfaction is important, quality is important. All of these we have had a discussion in last 10 or 9 weeks that we are working on this unit. But is there anything which is beyond loyalty? Is there anything which is beyond satisfaction? Is there anything which is beyond quality or service quality? They say it is engagement. So what is engagement? What is engagement? It's just go to Oxford Dictionary and they will tell you a meaning of engagement. Engagement is your level of involvement with something, right? Engagement is the level of involvement with something. Forget about products and services. Forget about companies. Now think that if you have bought a product, say you have bought a book from bookdepository.com, or if you have bought a car from, say, John Hughes, right? John Hughes is a car dealer here, if you're not aware. If you bought a car from there, and after a week or so, you get a survey. How was your car buying experience from John Hughes, right? Most often, 9 out of 10 people will ignore that survey. But what is the purpose of that survey? Anybody? What is the purpose of that survey? 2 days ago, we bought few items from Harvey Norman, and just today morning, we received a survey. And the title of the survey, how was your experience at Harvey Norman? Right? So what is the purpose of this survey? I haven't yet opened. I just saw the title of the email and I ignored it. And there are so many people who ignore it. But what is the purpose of that survey? Feedback. And feedback is an important component. I don't want to engage with Harvey Norman. And that's why I ignored their email. Right? So it's my inherent attribute that I don't want to engage with Harvey Norman, who did not offer me a bottle of water when I was thirsty. Right? During my purchase. And that is the reason I ignored their email. Had they offered me a bottle of water, I could have opened the email and filled it. So I'm not engaging with you. So engagement is a precursor to loyalty. Why would I go back to Harvey Norman again? Because they have the widest collection, not because they are the best in the town. They have the largest collection. The day I have a better alternative in this town, I will move from Harvey Norman to XYZ. Say if Amazon comes and opens a warehouse in Western Australia, then I would probably buy from Amazon and ignore Harvey Norman altogether. So I don't want to engage with Harvey Norman. But engagement is a precursor, please remember, for loyalty. Engagement is a precursor to spread positive word of mouth. So engagement is critically important for a service provider, that if I engage the service provider, the customer, the chances that they come back to me is higher. When you buy from, anybody buys from online stores? Anybody buys from online stores? Someone would have bought something from some website. Yes, which website? Book Depository. So after you bought the book, did you receive an email from them? Regarding what? And review about the book. They also send an email about, do you want to review the book? Review of the book, or review of your purchase, right? Amazon is very successful in this strategy. If you make a purchase of a product, they will ask you to review your purchase. The review is not the purchase process, but the product. And they will provide on the website the best review and the worst review, right? Now what is this review? Why are they asking review? And there are people who do this. There are people who do this at a price, and there are people who do this for free. Why do people do this? Why do Amazon solicit or Book Depository solicit this kind of a review? Why do I solicit these reviews? I can always forget you. You buy from me, go away. I don't need you anymore, right? You are a one-off customer. But I'm not doing that. I'm making an effort to come close to you and get your view about your purchase plus about the product. Why? It is a precursor. It is a way to tell the customer, come, not only help me, but help other customers. Those reviews help other customers as well. It's not a help only to the company. So when you go on Amazon and buy a product, you also see the reviews, what other customers are talking about. So it's the conversation. So what Amazon is trying to do is not only to build engagement, but to create conversation about the product. Right? And engagement is a lot about creating this conversation between the customers. So it's more about C2C than B2C. So it's a C2C conversation that the company is trying to generate, which benefits the company, which benefits you, the other customers. Right? So engagement is a lot about B2B, C2C, B2C. All of these taken together encompasses this whole concept of customer engagement. There is a link here, once you go, of a Forbes article, which is pretty decent. Some of the examples of the firms who are trying to build engagement are My Starbucks, Weight Watchers Meetings. Airbnb is a classic example of a company which is built around C2C conversations, of course facilitated by B2C, right? You probably know Uber, but you don't know Ola. Ola is a competitor of Uber in India, right? Nike Plus is a classic example of a product which has taken that step from being a product to becoming a service. So it's not a shoe anymore. Nike Plus is not a shoe. It is. We discussed Nike Plus twice in the last 10 weeks, and we're going to discuss it again today. Nike Plus is not a product. It is an experience. I'm glad you remember. It is an experience. It is a service ecosystem. It is connected to internet. It is connected to your wearable technology which you have on your wrist, your Fitbit. It is connected to your Facebook. It is connected to, so there is a multiple service providers who are working in tandem to build that experience. Then you have Shoes of Prey, and the list goes on and on. So these are some of the handful of companies who are using engagement as a tool to build business, to build loyalty, right? And all of them are trying to do something is to create conversation around the product, around the service, around the offer. So what is customer engagement and how it is evolved? This is an inverted triangle. Read the triangle from bottom up, not top down. Now, if you look at marketing and how it has evolved and what is the state of marketing at the moment, this was the state of marketing in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, where it was transaction. And the method we use is RFM, recency, frequency, monetary value. How recently you purchased, how often you buy, and how much did you spend. These were the indicators of business success in 50s, 60s, 70s. Recency, so please remember the acronym RFM. However, 70s onwards, 80s onward, people started to think that transaction orientation is not enough. Transaction orientation, you buy from me and I forget you as the customer. Right? One-off purchase, I don't care about you. Most of the companies in this part of the world have this kind of a mentality. Transaction orientation, even today, 2017. Right? Particularly real estate companies, telecom service providers, they don't care. Right? You buy and they forget you. But there are companies who are creating a service ecosystem to build loyalty, like IINet, for example, is one of the very less number of telecom companies in this part of the world which is trying to use service as a differentiator. Everybody can provide internet services. But the service in that internet services, IINet is trying to provide. Okay? So they are moving from transaction orientation to building relationships. How can you build relationships? Anybody? How can you build relationships? Human relationships. How do you build human relationships? How do you build human relationships? By talking to people, one, care about them, trusting them. Right? I can always build a relationship with my partner. Right? But if I'm polygamous, that relationship doesn't last. Right? So polygamy is the opposite of loyalty. Loyalty is sticking to one service provider. Polygamy is sticking to more than one service provider. The relationships are built on conversations. Relationships, customer relationships are built on trust and commitment. If I trust you as a service provider, I come back to you. So after I moved from my earlier service provider to IINet, I'm sticking to IINet for the last 2.5 years. We moved to our new house, still I carried along my IINet services to our new house, right? Just because I can see a conscious effort from the company to take care of me, the customer, right? So there is a conscious move in the business, in practice, from becoming a transaction orientation firm to becoming a relationship oriented firm, where I care for you, the customer. So there is a service culture. However, there is another move here. So only building relationships is not enough. There has to be emotions there. You need to be very happy. So unless you are happy, you will not stick to the service provider. So the moment you talk of emotions, you are moving from relationship building to building engagement, to creating engaged customers. Customers who will not think twice and fill the survey sent by a company. Customers who will not think twice before they go and write a review on Amazon.com. So unless you have that emotional attachment between the customer and the company, you cannot have this thing called engagement between the customer and the company. So this is the latest talk of the town where companies are trying to move. Not everybody can do that. But some of the companies that we have shown in the last slide here, most of these guys have moved on from being transaction to relationship, and they are all here in this block. Does it make sense to you? Are you able to get where we are trying to reach, right? So most of the firms that we discussed last slide, they are making, or they have already made a move from relationships. So they are not only building relationships, but they are creating a conversation and engaging the customer on various platforms. So you cannot create engagement if you do not have a platform to build that engagement, okay? Any questions, comments on this? So what is customer engagement? Anybody? So now you know everything about customer engagement. So what is customer engagement? So customer engagement, this is the latest paper in Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, and they have a very simplistic definition of customer engagement. It is a mechanism of customers' value addition to the firm, either through direct or indirect contribution. So this is the customer's contribution to the firm. We always talk about company's contribution to customers. Customer engagement is customers' direct or indirect contribution to the firm's value. What are those direct contributions that a customer makes to the company? What do you do to add value to the company directly? You pay, right? Paying is adding value to the firm, right or wrong? Paying is adding value to the firm. So direct contribution is nothing but the purchases that you make. The repeat purchases that you make are the added value. And what are the indirect contributions? Is there an indirect contribution that you make to the company? It's the positive word of mouth. It's the customer acting as a part-time employee of the firm. You talking about a company is nothing but free publicity, free advertising for the company, for the brand. Right? So indirect contributions are referrals or word of mouth, the conversations that you generate on social media. Now you think of Instagram. What do you do on Instagram? Anybody on Instagram? You just upload photos. Why do you upload photos? To inspire maybe? Share your life. Share a piece of you with others, right? Share a piece of you on others. I have a friend in India, whenever she goes to eat out, is it a breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, whatever you call it, the first thing before she starts eating is she will take a photo of the food. Immediately she will post on Instagram along with the name of the restaurant, and then she will start eating. And she has created such a nice collection of beautiful food products on her Instagram page. But why does she do that? Why does she do that? She's just a part of the conversation going around on that particular category called food. So it's a social media conversation that you're doing. You're sharing. So we are all living in this whole thing called sharing economy, right? And sharing is an innate need of every human being, right? And these platforms just enables that sharing nature. And we also add value to the firms in terms of feedback and suggestions to the firm. So this is the simplistic understanding of what customer engagement is. But why is customer engagement important? Very practical 4 points. Why is customer engagement important? It builds customer loyalty. It helps create repeat purchases, customer-based profits, and customer ambassadorship for your brand. In one word, customer advocacy, the last word. And there are empirical research which shows that if you are able to create that conversation, if you are able to create engagement between the customer and the company, being Starbucks, be it Shoes of Prey, be it McDonald's, be it Pizza Hut, be it any XYZ company, who is able to create that engagement that will have a positive relationship with all of these business level outcomes or firm level outcomes which we need, right? Increase profits and profitability. Is there any company who does not want to increase the profit and profitability? Everybody, right? And there is enough empirical evidence which shows that customer loyalty, customer advocacy, customer purchases all have a positive relationship with the firm profit and sales growth rate, SGR. Does that make sense? And hence, this creates a business case to have engagement as a strategy by service firms. Any questions? And there is some other research evidence which is coming, which shows that engaged customers are less price sensitive. They resist switching. Less price sensitive means I don't care about too much of a price. I just go and buy because I'm loyal. I resist switching. Although there is a good offer, I stick to, say, Apple, or I stick to Starbucks, or I stick to XYZ company. I don't switch. So if you don't switch, you are loyal to your original service provider. So customer engagement is critically and strategically important for a service firm. Is there any negative effect of customer engagement? I haven't put it up on, just to wake you up. These are all the positive effects of customer engagement. Is there any negative effect or negative side to customer engagement? Is there any negative side to customer engagement? Negative word of mouth is also a form of engagement, right? So if service is not delivered the way it is promised, people still engage, but they engage in a negative way, right? They engage to harm you. They engage to pull down your value. You also did a case study called United Breaks Guitars. Did you do the case study? It's a classic case of engagement going in the negative direction, right? This guy is so very engaged, but that engagement is to harm the company, United Airlines, not to add value. So engagement, if not managed properly, can backfire. United Breaks Guitars is a classic case of engagement which goes into the other direction. So but there is very less. There are three aspects to engagement. Please make a note of it, because that is not there. It's not there on the slides. There are three aspects to engagement which usually people are interested in, or firms are interested in. One, the cognitive aspect of engagement. Cognitive aspect. Two, the affective aspect. Cognitive is, do I believe that the firm is good so that I can engage? Do I believe that the firm takes care of the society, hence I engage with the firm? So it's my belief which creates the engagement. Number two is affective engagement. AFFECTIVE, affective engagement, where I have some sort of an emotional feeling towards the brand and hence I engage. I feel that Apple is a good brand. I feel that Whole Foods takes care of the stakeholders or the society, and hence I engage with Whole Foods, right? Because it's an organic food retailer. So I have an effect towards that brand. I have an emotional feeling and attachment towards that brand. And finally, behavior or behavioral engagement. There are three aspects. And all that you do, writing reviews, providing feedback, suggestions, comes as the last component of engagement, which is behavior. But there is very less research which looks into customer engagement behavior as a strategic component of any service firm. We recently published a paper where we looked at customer engagement behavior for hotels across 4 countries, India, China, Australia, and America. And we tried to look at what are the different types of engagement behaviors that customers engage in, right? But how do we define customer engagement behavior? If you see, this is the simplest way of understanding customer engagement behavior. That CEBs are defined as customers' behavioral manifestations towards the brand or firm beyond purchase. So, behavior part of engagement only starts after you have made the purchase. You don't spread word of mouth usually before you buy the product, right? Before you experience the product, before you experience the service. You talk about the service after you have experienced the service, right? So CEBs are critically important once the purchase is done. Means engagement behavior is important once the purchase is done. And why do you engage in them? Because you want to internally. We looked at 4 types of engagement behaviors, and we identified these 4 types, which are very much close to a couple of European scholars who did this same work: augmenting CEB, co-developing CEB, influencing CEB, and mobilizing CEB. These are all there in your slides. We'll talk about each of them very briefly. So we looked at 4 types, and these are critically important. If you want to measure CEB, we have created a scale, just like your serve call scale. We created a scale for CEB. So if you want to measure whether your customers are engaging in CEBs or engagement behaviors, you can use our scale and manage and track people's engagement over a period of time. So that paper got published a couple of months ago in Journal of Business Research. So how do we define augmenting CEBs? Augmenting CEBs occur when a customer's contributions augment the offering. Means you create content on social media that supports an organization's offerings. Something like StarbucksIdea.com, where you add or you provide some feedback to create or augment the offering or add value to the offering. Co-developing CEBs, again, new product ideas where a customer's contribution helps a firm's development processes. Influencing, where you influence others. So when a customer's contribution affect or change other customers' perception. So if you have eaten at a nice restaurant, Indian restaurant, after your dining experience, you come out and you talk about that Indian restaurant, right? That is influencing. So influencing others. If you want to have good Indian food, go to that XYZ restaurant. That is influencing. And finally, mobilizing, where I convince. If you want to have food, you have to have it there. That is convincing. It's not only saying, just saying, do not eat at others. Eat there. So it's very close to advocacy. Advocacy and word of mouth are not same. Advocacy is a stronger form of word of mouth, where I convince others that buy this product with positive reviews and other things, right? So broadly, these are the 4 types of CEBs which customers engage in, either it is the product sector or the services sector. This research is in the services, primarily in the hospitality sector, but we say this with a greater confidence because we found the similar structure across 4 countries, 2 developed and 2 developing nations, right? The reading for this particular thing is there on your optional reading list if you want to read. This was published in Journal of Business Research a couple of months ago. Because unless you measure who are those people who are engaging in which way, it's hard to manage the engagement that is happening between the customer and the company. I think we'll take a break here, and the last section we'll talk about service encounter. We'll take a 5 minutes break, and then we will conclude with service encounter.
Understand the difference.
This is where you provide.
Okay, I understand this one is like preparation right? This way we are kind of
Augmenting is like when you go on this website and you say positive things about it. So you are not telling other, you just saying this product is good, this product can be used in different ways. You think of this particular Australians eat a lot. It's like a spread people use on bread, very popular Australian.
Gotcha.
once you have Vegemite, you go on your website and you say, these are the alternate ways of using Vegemite, and you put it up on social media. So knowingly or unknowingly, you are augmenting the value of the product, the way, what are the different ways of utilizing the product. So that's augmenting the existing product. Co-development is something like you become a part, like Lego. Lego is another example of co-development, where the users, along with the firm, creating. So Threadless, do you remember Threadless.com?
Yeah, the T-shirt.
T-shirt company, where I suggest designs, and out of say a number of designs. The group of people at the company, they choose one or two winners. That is called influencing. Is more like, it's a good brand, use the brand. However, mobilizing is like convincing, this is the brand, use it. So there is a very fine line of difference between these different types. However, there is a difference.
Wait, so the last two are both like asking people to
Use the product. But one, this is the more high level of influence. This is the lower level. This is the difference between word of mouth and advocacy. So this could be advocacy. This could be word of mouth. So when a customer's contribution, after a change in the customer's perception and their behavior,
Yeah.
when customers' contribution mobilize other stakeholder behavior towards the firm, right? So it could be only customers. Here, it could be other stakeholders, right? So it could be say, investors, anybody, like Whole Foods is the classic example. Whole Foods, it's an organic food retailer in America, where the stakeholders the customers not only recommend other customers to use the product, but they also recommend to the employees, to the other stakeholders in the firm to kind of do good to the company. So there's a subtle difference between these.
Isn't it like kind of type of positive word of mouth, which is more like under the influencing
Yeah, it is
media?
positive word of mouth. This is more like advocacy, which is a higher order of
Do
positive.
you have like an example for utilizing?
Convince our customers. This I came across a couple of weeks ago. So when I was looking to buy furniture, and then I went to a website where I get different types of furniture, and then I was looking for like where should I go and buy this furniture. So then there was a group of people, so communities. So usually communities, and there is a community called MAT. Just a second. Emily. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAW. So this is an online community where all the mothers will come together to mobilize the other stakeholders, or convince other stakeholders that
So this
drunk
one is
driving.
more like just simply mentioning it, and this
This
one
is
is
like
like
do this.
you actually need to spend effort to like build something.
They build something. So online communities or communities could be an example of mobilizing cities.
So when all these like company, like let's say cosmetic companies send their new products to all these like famous YouTubers who are like the opinion leaders on YouTube for free for them to like test out their products, do you call that like, is it kind of
Mobilizing,
mobilizing?
it is mobilizing, yes. Where you kind of provide evidences and say, buy this product or buy this service. So it's more like evidence-based and convincing others. Because this is more like spreading only. Right? So this is usually the way it is considered is like this is more of higher order word of mouth, and this is more like a lower order word of mouth. That's the way this is different. But there's a lot of scope to kind of dig deeper into this and do further research to understand. This is just the beginning and the initial steps to kind of look at the different classification of this, So it's a very early days of research which we are trying to look at.
Okay.
Right? But online community certainly work here, which convinces others not only to buy but for a cause. Yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's start. Okay, we'll start this session with a question called what is service encounter? What is service encounter? What is service encounter? Come on, what is service encounter? This is an encounter happening, right? Every week it happens between me and you. Well, although we have only usual suspects every week, but we do have an encounter, right? An encounter which lasts for about 1 hour, 45 minutes. So any encounter has a time and a space element to it. Any service encounter has a time and a space element. You need the space, you need the time for the encounter to happen, right? So service encounter is nothing but the interaction happening between the customer and the service provider. That is service encounter 1.0. That is service encounter 1.0. It's a dyadic interaction between the customer and the service provider. It is also termed as moments of truth. If you read some of the older textbooks of service marketing and service management, they talk of service encounters as moments of truth or moments of interactions, right? And primarily, they focus on human to human interactions. It focuses between human to the firm. So it's either between the customer and the employees, or it is between the customer and the firm. So most of the time, people have considered, or practitioners, researchers have considered service encounter being a dyadic relationship between the customer and the company, right? Now I'll take you back to service triangle again. Now this is probably the third time that we will be talking about service triangle, because this is such a simplistic model which captures efficiently some of the well understood concepts of services marketing. Now if you see this service triangle through the lens of service encounter, what are the different encounters that are happening here? What are the different interactions? Encounters, interactions, whatever name you want to give, you give. Moments of truth. What are the different interactions that are happening here? So the customer, who is often a human, right? Employees, who are often humans. Firm, which is a group of humans, right? So if we see here, there are three-way interactions happening between human to firm, firm to human. So basically, you have a three-way interaction, or three types of interactions that are happening, or three types of encounters that are happening between the customer and the employees, between the customer and the firm, and between the employees and the firm, right? However, in today's environment, technology is disrupting or affecting all of these interactions. Please think carefully. Technology, now this technology could be any technology. It could be a smartphone, it could be artificial intelligence, it could be Internet of Things, it could be what do you tie on your wrist? Fitbit. It could be a wearable health technology, it could be any health monitoring device, right? Any of this. So technology here is a broader term which captures any latest technology which disrupts the encounters or the service delivery mechanism. Now if you see, technology affects the interaction between customer and employees. Does it affect? Between the employees and the customer, does it affect? How does it affect? How does technology impact the encounter between the customer and the employees? The other day we were
buying some furniture at one of the furniture retail stores here. And we had something in mind. We went to the store, and then there was a floor employee on the floor who came to serve us. He was having a tablet in his hand, right? And the tablet must have some sort of an interface, some sort of an app or software, which had everything in the store, and he was asking certain questions so that he can customize an offer for us. And everything was on his palm top, right? So we don't need to look into a physical copy of the store book, or we don't need to look into a computer system. He is having everything. So when he's interacting with me or us to help us buying our furniture, he was constantly being assisted by some sort of an app on his tablet, right? So this encounter between the employee and the customer is facilitated by this technology, right? This technology again affects the interaction between the customer and the firm. Now think of Airbnb, think of airline booking, think of hotel reservations. There was a time when how did you do hotel reservations 20 years ago? And how you do your hotel reservations today? You can do everything on your palm top, right? Using an app. Okay? So even that traditional hotel booking, airline booking, is being disrupted or affected by this technology. So this encounter between the customer and the firm is also affected. Now think of the encounter between employees and the firm, whether this is disrupted as well. Now there are so many firms which provide an option for the employees to work from home, right? To work from home. Technology is the enabler which provides that platform where you as an employee can work from home, right? Now can you think of work from home 20, 30 years ago when you cannot log in? I have friends who work in the banking sector, say Bankwest, in the IT department, where he creates mobile apps and manages this entire mobile app of Bankwest. Now this guy, if he's working from home, he just logs in through his login details on their portal, and he is online. He's working from home, but technology is the enabler. So technology affects the relationship. Please be attentive. Technology enables the relationship between firm and its employees. Technology affects the relationship between the firm and the customer. Technology affects the relationship between the employees and the customers, right? So technology has an impact on all of those interactions or encounters. So what is happening now is, along with these interactions, which were in Service Encounter 1, SE stands for Service Encounter 1.0, right? Where you had human to human, customer to employees, human to firm, customer to firm, and human to firm, employees to firm. All of these were existing. Bang comes all smart technologies, right? Where you have human to human interaction still there, but there is a new interaction that is happening, which is human to technology. So you are interacting with technology. And there is another interaction that is happening, which is T2T, technology to technology, where the technologies interact with each other, or object to object. You can call it object to object. And this is the whole game of IoT, or Internet of Things. So it's not the internet, but how your things are connected and whether your things provide services. Is it confusing you? Whether things provide services. Now Fitbit, which you have on your wrist, is a classic example of a thing, a product which provides service, right? It counts your steps, then it gives you your heart rate, this, that, all sorts of things. Samsung 8 Plus, or what is that? Latest edition of phone, it has got some sort of an app which counts your caffeine level and everything in that app. So it's a thing which is providing a service as a result of technology and technology interaction. So what is happening, the whole encounter between the customer and the company is being facilitated, and newer forms of interactions are happening between the customer and the company, right? And this is what is the additional understanding of service encounter as a result of infusion of technology, right? So what's happening? What is happening is that all of these technologies, artificial intelligence, smartphones, advanced robotics, and Internet of Things, are fundamentally altering the interactions between the customer and the company. That's what is happening. The way we used to talk to companies is changing. We don't need to pick up a phone and talk to the company. We just need an app on a mobile phone, right, to interact with the firm. There is a changing interdependence between employees, customers, and the firm, all facilitated by technology. And SEs are now enabled by complex service systems. Now, think of your car breaking down on a street. So what do? You usually call an insurance company, right? What does your insurance company do? So is your breakdown handled only by insurance company? No. You need multiple service providers. You need an ecosystem of service providers. You need your insurance company, you need your towing company, you need your car rental company, you need some sort of a repair company. So I had a breakdown, say, about a couple of months ago. There was a Hertz rental, there was a car repair store, there was a windshield repairer, and all sorts of things. So at one point in time, I had 5 service providers working in tandem, facilitated by technology, to create my ultimate service delivery. So the purpose of this talk on Service Encounter 2 is to understand this complex service system. So it's not only between one customer and one company. It's between customer and a set of multiple service providers. And the customer is not interacting with the company through one channel. You interact with the company through multiple channels. Am I right or wrong? Do you interact only with the company through phones? No. You interact through emails, you interact through apps, you interact with other social media platforms, right? So what has happened is there is a proliferation of channels through which you can interact with your customers and your customers can interact with you. And that is the fundamental shift that has happened from Service Encounter 1.0 to Service Encounter 2.0 where we are today. So there is a multiple channel. So when you have multiple channels, what is the job of a service provider? Think of banks, for example. Classic example would be banks. How do you interact with banks today? There was a time when you have to physically go to a bank to do your banking. How many of us go to a bank to avail banking services today? In the last 1 month, how many times did you visit your bank? Any of you? I haven't visited my bank. You have visited. Only one out of so many people that's sitting here. I have visited Westpac only 2 times in the last 4 years that I am in Western Australia. Only 2 times. Once when I opened my bank account, second when I needed a home loan. That's all I visited, right? So that is one channel of communication. What are the other channels of communication you have with the banks? Apps, mobile apps. Third one, ATMs. Fourth one, say it again, telephone. Fifth, sorry, internet banking. Sixth, Twitter. You're not banking, but you are still interacting, right? You can interact with your bank on Twitter. You can interact with your bank on Facebook. And if they have a LinkedIn presence, they can interact with your bank on LinkedIn, social media presence. So there is, the moral of the story is, there was a time when there was only a teller counter, physical teller counter. You have to go and do your banking services. Even if you want to talk to your bank, you have to visit the bank, physical bank. But today you don't need to do that. So there is a proliferation of channels from being one to multiple channels. What is the challenge for a company in this Service Encounter 2.0 when you have a proliferation of channels? When you have more than one channel, what is the challenge for a company? Because every interaction is an encounter, right? So if you are a social media savvy person, you are there on Twitter. If anything goes wrong, you go on Twitter. You go on internet banking, whatever. So what is the challenge for a company? When you have so many channels, it's called omni-channel or multiple channels. What is the challenge for a bank? Consistency of experience across all these channels. That is the classic challenge for any bank. Consistency of managing the experience of the customer across all of these channels. When you use internet banking, you have an experience. When you use physical retail counter, you have an experience. So the challenge for the firm is to optimize customers' experience at every point of interaction. Does it make sense? How do I do that? Is the question that everybody is trying to answer. Not only your banks, but even your retailers, grocery retailers. Right? So what's Service Encounter 2.0? There is a classic definition which just appeared in Journal of Business Research. It's any customer-company interaction that results from a service system that is comprised of interrelated technologies, either company or customer-owned, human actors, digital environments, and company customer processes. Not hard to understand. If you take any example, banking or retailing. Take retailing as an example or banking as an example. So any customer-company interaction on a mobile banking app, which results from interrelated technologies, mobile technology and service providers, and digital environment and processes. So it's just a working definition of Service Encounter 2.0. But the idea is, how do I optimize customer and company interaction at each of those touch points? Technology plays a central role in Service Encounter 2.0. Now, if we take example from the retail industry, I just came across a set of technologies here which retailers are using. 10 examples of augmented reality in retail. Like Topshop started something called Kinect dressing rooms, where you can dress up before buy. Makeup mirror. This is again some retailers use this, makeup mirror. Just go through this. Color changing apps. So all of these I am utilizing JBS Forever Mark Fitting. So all of these I am trying to utilize technology before you make a purchase, just to help you out in your purchase process. Walmart started something called Smart Trolley a while ago in the US. The idea of Smart Trolley was one of the problems that I face, and I'm sure all of you face. If you go to any retail store, you take your trolley, go to the parking lot, and you have to find a place for the trolley, right? This is a classic problem. And there are companies who deal with this problem here. And they will have 2 or 3 people at most of these shopping centers who collect all the trolleys. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? They collect trolleys. And they put it on a car or anything, on a ute, and they take it out. Walmart tried to solve this problem, and they came up with something called smart trolleys, which will be programmed, and the moment you take your grocery, and the trolley is programmed in such a way it will find its way to a proper trolley parking place. Classic example of solving a problem which most of the Australian retail stores are hobbling around, right? You leave everywhere you go the trolleys. So again, it's an example of a Service Encounter 2. But why do we need to bother about Service Encounter 2.0? Anybody? Why do we need to bother? Why do we need to spend some time to understand Service Encounter 2.0? Any thoughts? Why do we need to examine? Very less knowledge exists on this about how to optimally manage customer experience. Trust me on this. Not many companies know it, neither do researchers know it, how to do this. Initial works are happening. So why do we need to bother about understanding this Encounter 2.0?
To differentiate yourself from competitors?
Say it again.
Differentiate yourself?
To differentiate yourself. I'm sure you have missed this, the links that I posted on discussion forum about Service Encounter. There are 3 links. Please, there is Rob Kaufman. He's a nice speaker on service encounter. And he says, and I agree on this, and after you listen to his links, that there is nothing much to differentiate. A laptop is a laptop. Meat is meat, fish is fish, apple is apple. Then why do I go to Woolies to buy apple, leaving Coles? How do I differentiate, right? How do I say that my apple is better than your apple? That's where Service Encounter 2.0 comes into picture. And how do I manage that encounter that you are present? And most of the Australian retail stores are trying to do that. They are trying to manage your experience when you are present at the store, right or wrong. The moment you enter the store, and say you spend 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour at a retail store, how well I manage your stay at a typical retail store. Most of the companies know that. But what they don't know is how to manage the experience before I come to the store and how to manage the experience after I leave the store, right? Service Encounter 2.0 tries to answer some of these questions. That managing in-store experience is not enough. Managing out-of-the-store experience is also important because you interact with retailers not only in the store but also outside the store, right? Because relationships are built based on a series of encounters, based on a series of interactions. And we need to rethink how to manage the customer experience journey, right? Say if you want to buy a car, or if you want to buy, say, a holiday destination, you want to buy leisure product, Trust me, most of us, before we head off and book our hotel, actually have bought the hotel in our head before we make the payment. Am I right or wrong? Most of us buy the airline ticket in our head before we go and pay the product. Although we do scanning, although we do all the searches and all to get the best value for money, but we do have some sort of a reserved value in our brain, in our mind, before we make the purchase. So before we leave the house, we have already bought that fish or that meat from Woolies before physically buying from the Woolies, right? So we have already made the purchase in our head. We just need to take our car, physically go to Woolies, pay for that fish and meat, and come back. So how do I enter that space and make you buy my product before you buy my product? Does that make sense? Buying or making you buy the product before you actually have bought the product. So before you leave the house, you've already made the decision, I'm not buying that apple from Coles, I'm buying from Woolies. How can I do that? You can only do that if you manage pre-core experience, not core experience only. And this is what is Service Encounter 2.0. We'll look at that. Each positive experience or service encounter positively affects service quality, satisfaction, and repeat purchase. And hence, we need to look at each of the encounters, discrete encounters. Because these discrete encounters create a continuous customer experience. Encounter at ATM, encounter at retail, at the bank physical retail store, encounter as online banking, encounter at mobile app. All of these are discrete encounters, right or wrong. But experience is not discrete. Experience is continuous. So all of these encounters taken together, managed properly, will lead to a continuous positive experience, which will have positive impact on all of these outcomes. But most of the firms focus on this core service encounter. Please make a note of this. Most of the firms are good at this. Core service encounter. Core service encounter is when you enter a hotel and avail their services. They are very good at that. Nice bed, nice ambience, nice food, nice people. The core service. But most people today in Service Encounter 2.0, where technology is the enabler, technology is the mainstay, do not know how to manage pre-core service encounter and post-core service encounter. So Service Encounter 2.0 has 3 encounters or 3 periods inbuilt in it. Number 1, pre-core experience. Number 2, core experience. Number 3, post-core experience. The core experience is when you walk into a Woolies store and you make your purchase and you come out. That is the core experience where you actually do the act of purchase. You are acting, right? You are an actor. As a customer, you are an actor. So you are making an act of purchase. That is the core purchase. But what do you do after you make that purchase is critically important, and that is customer engagement behavior, which we spoke a little while ago, right? And what you do before you enter Woolies. Did you do the search? Did you compare the products? Did you compare the price? Did you see the email sent by Woolies? Did they send you an SMS? Did they send you a customized offer for you only, right? And that pushed you to Woolies. Or is it your attitude for which you go to Woolies to buy, right? That is pre-core service encounter. In Service Encounter 1.0, the focus was only on this, primarily. In Service Encounter 2.0, the focus is in all the 3 periods of Service Encounter. Because all of us as customers go through these 3 encounters. And this is this is adopted from Voorhees et al.'s latest paper into the Journal of Business Research, which captures very nicely those 3 periods. And read the graph from left to right. Pre-core service encounter. This is where we do the information search. This is where we do the initial contact with the company. This is where the company makes an effort to convince you, do not go to Coles, come to Woolies. And hence they have positioning statements. We are the fresh food people, right? And airline companies do the same thing. When Virgin comes and says, we make airfare. Have you heard of this phrase? Virgin says, we make airfare. F-A-I-R. Right? Now why do they do that? They are doing that so that they hook you here. They hook you here and they get your attention. Because attention leads to interest. Interest leads to action. Or desire. Attention, interest, desire, action is the typical model of advertising and communication. So unless I hook you in the initial phase, in the pre-core experience phase, this is not going to happen. So the moment I say Virgin, we make airfare, I am trying to hook you on the price aspect, right? So do not go to others, come to me, I'll give you the better price, fair price, okay? I'll hook your attention. And the moment I hook your attention, you'll be interested in Virgin. And you buy Virgin, right? Core experience is when you fly Virgin. The employees, the in-flight attendants, the technology that you have in-flight, the ambience, the environment, all of these. Most of the airline companies are great at doing this, right? They know how to manage your in-flight customer experience. However, there are companies who do not know how to manage your out-of-the-flight customer experience, which is post-core service encounter. And this is where your United Airlines case is relevant and important. Service recovery efforts. If something has gone wrong, how do I recover? The other day we bought a burger. My daughter asked, like, the McDonald's, that Happy Meal concept is a star, right? McDonald's Happy Meal concept is a star. Do you know about Happy Meal concept? It's a star. It's a nice tactic which has worked because kids don't buy Happy Meal for meal. They buy for that happiness, that little piece of happiness that is there in that box, right? We went to buy for my daughter and I convinced her not to buy a Happy Meal. And then we bought a separate set of burgers. And we don't eat beef or pork. So we ordered a chicken burger. We went home and there was a nice piece of bacon hanging around through the loaf of bread, right? Two slices of bread. We immediately called them and they said, we're sorry, please bring it back. We will give you an exchange. We took it back. They gave us exchange. They also gave us some lollies, a frappe, and some other goodies, free of cost. Now, why do you think they did that? These are nothing but service recovery efforts. So there is a service failure, and the core product of McDonald's, that is burger, he did not give me the right burger, so there is a service failure. Once there is a service failure, the first thing that a service provider must do is apologize. And there is enough research evidence to show. If you apologize, customers' anger comes down. And this is something happened, again, United Airlines, they had an incident at the beginning of this year when our passenger was dragged out of the aircraft. Do you know that story? After about a day, the CEO of the company apologized, not immediately next day. After about a day, he apologized. And later on, whatever happened, happened. So that is the first. So apologize and provide additional offers or additional value, something more than the basic product so that the customer feel good. Right? So that is the post-core. How do you manage the experience after the core service? Customer feedback, this is where customer engagement comes. Reviews, crowdsourcing, recommendation, all of these are captured in our CEB types that we discussed about some time ago, right? So in Service Encounter 2, and please remember this diagram is critically important. If you see this pre-core, core and post-core, these are discrete encounters. But if you see service experience, which is continuous. So as a customer, for me it is not discrete, but for a company it is discrete. For me, it happens in tandem. Pre, core, post, all happens in tandem for me as a customer. So for a customer, the service experience is a continuous phenomena. But for a company, you need to treat all these phases separately so that you don't go wrong here, you don't go wrong here, you don't go wrong here. So service failure can happen here, service failure can happen here. Service failure can happen at any of these three stages. But the job of a company is to track, and hence our scale of CEB would be useful so that I can track the service performance. I can track service failure. So if service failure happens, the next thing is service recovery. How do I recover from that failure? How do I help the customer to feel good? It's all about making the customer feel good. Right? Any questions so far? Does it make sense to you? Is it making, this is where the latest research in services is happening. Service experience and how do we provide optimal customer experience across the different interaction points. Right? Any comments, questions? So there is a nice definition which captures whatever we have discussed so far about Service Encounter 2. Bittner and Wang, they say that any discrete interaction between the customer and the service provider relevant to a core service offering, including the interaction involving provision of core service offering itself. So what it means is, whatever it takes to offer the core service, please do, but do incorporate the pre and the post. So all boils down to interaction. And we positioned the entire unit when we started on two things. One is interaction, two is experience. And these are the two things which have been coming time and again in most of the discussions that we have had. Any questions so far? I think we'll probably stop here. So if anybody wants to summarize, what have we done today? There is one small section, probably you read that on your own. You should be able to understand after this. So what are the three things that we tried to discuss today, if you want to give it a conclusion? So we started with three agenda items. One was to give a brief revisit on service dominant logic. Two was to have a brief understanding of customer engagement and its importance for service firms. And three, what is Service Encounter 2.0, right? So service dominant logic. If anybody wants to summarize in one line, what is service dominant logic?
It's focusing on the experience surrounding a purchase rather than the product.
The product. So it's the experience-centric, customer-centric, value co-creation. These are the three aspects of service dominant logic. engagement, which leads to the customer-focused engagement. What is engagement? Engagement is the way of how do I create closeness between the customer and the company. And what are the benefits of engagement? The prime benefit of engagement is it leads to loyalty. And we have enough empirical evidence to show that customer loyalty has a positive correlation with firm profitability and profits. And finally, we try to look into how technology is enabling this entire service environment to move from Service Encounter 1.0 to Service Encounter 2.0, where we have additional points of interaction created. So we have omni-channels created for typical service firms, and the job is to look at the 3 difficult phases of customer experience, pre, core, and post. And how do I create integration? There is a lot to talk about, but I think we have to finish here, otherwise it becomes too complicated, right? But at least we get the core of the thing, not to leave out the pre and the post customer experience when it comes to service encounters. And that kind of encapsulates the understanding of service dominant logic, co-creation, engagement behavior, and service encounter 2.0. Any questions, comments, or else I'll see you next week. Next week we have a guest speaker from Compass Group who will talk about how to manage demand and supply in the context of services. So we'll have the first half of lecture and the second half of guest talk next week. And that is our last lecture, but we will have a recap session in week 13, right? So 2 more weeks to go, and then any problems you're facing with your project, or is it moving along smoothly? I haven't heard from anybody. Okay, so if there is still any issues, do let me know about your projects. Thank you.
I just to ask about the format for the report. So like you know how you gave us like various questions. How do we go about like hitting those, or do we just put like I forgot the question, but like or do we go about like saying like like what was it like factors that made whatever successful, like
Are you talking about the project?
yeah, the project.
Right.
So like, we're not too sure how to go about the hitting the format of the.
I think there is a section in the brief where we talk about the format as well. Just have a look at it. But there is no
Like
set.
there's no fixed like.
There is no
subheading
fixed
that-
format.
Uh-huh.
There is no fixed subheadings. It depends on your company, your organization
Okay,
that
so-
you've chosen. But when you talk about service blueprinting, there are some commonalities that every project will have, because the concept and the theory is the same.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What is different is the context and the company that you have chosen.
Okay.
And so the blueprint is going to be different for different organizations.
Oh yeah, the
And we
blueprint
want-
is different, but the report itself, like what we're explaining, like what we're answering for the questions that are given. So we just put our own subheadings that we think is
it's
good.
very subjective. So I left it open primarily so that you have room for creativity there. So you can do that.
Do we need references for this assignment?
Yes, that is mentioned in your brief. Just see that for your assignment you do need references,
Okay.
because you're not writing everything only from your company. You're writing a lot from the theory as well. So the primary reference is your service blueprinting by Bittner, but there are other papers from Bittner. If you're using experience, customer experience management literature, then it would be good to have some references, because it's a postgraduate, undergraduate level 3. So it would be good to have some reference. I think I do talk about reference in the brief.
I see, yeah, you do.
Somewhere
You did,
I
yeah.
mentioned, right? So it would be good. Right? Yeah.